right, you guys. Hello, I'm here with Andrew McKenzie.
Hello.
Um, this is my good friend. We met in Egypt. And he lives in New Zealand. And I've had him on before because he wrote Wester Island, which is a really amazing book that you guys should all read. And you're working on the second one still, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew. He's like one of my very good ancient history friends. We geek out about it like weekly. Okay, so we decided to read the Book of Og, or what is it? This one, the Book of
Yeah,
Og and Enoch and the Giants by Demon. Okay, first of all,
yeah,
this bothers me that their name's Damon.
yeah. It's weird. It's a strange. Why don't they just put their real name? I don't know. The translation is by a guy called Father Martin,
Right.
and there are
Interesting.
some people that have rejected this as being a fake from the Middle Ages, and so a lot of people haven't touched this. But this was released by the Vatican, um,
In 2016.
yeah, or 2015, and then
And
this guy started working on the translation in 2016. I'll just quickly read what it says in the introduction. The Book of King Og in its entirety is currently under lock and key deep in the bowels of the Vatican. What has been transcribed is housed in the secret Vatican Library at the Department of Ancient Documents and Surviving Occult Findings. This department is curated under the Vatican's residing American bishop and translator, Father Martin, currently traveling abroad. Father Martin has only been able to work exclusively on the translation in earnest since the spring of 2016. And then it goes earlier on. It describes that it's in this. This is translating from the Aramaic, and what it was written in before that, who knows?
right.
Um,
Um, and so like, okay, what are your impressions of if of its authenticity?
well, I think it's definitely, it reads like it's from the period. So whether that doesn't mean it's authentic, but I think it's as old as it claims to be. The language used and the rhythm of the writing, which is very much like a lot of the Old Testament stuff. Some of it's even iambic pentameter and all that kind of thing. We don't really know if it's real or not, but remember we were talking. We thought, well, let's go over it anyway
Yeah.
because no one else is covering it. There's some interesting stuff in there.
Well, and I don't think half the shit in the world to real. So I mean, who? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, history. I think most of the people that will be listening to this will be agreeing with us that our history is not as written by the Orthodox view,
So
academic.
then, so like I'm just gonna give it a fair go and act as if it is what it says it is in terms
Yeah.
of, what. So okay, this is about a giant war. So this is about,
Mm.
um, okay, so King Og is a giant, and then he hates Nimrod, and
Nimrod.
Nimrod is another, and they're so Nimrod is a Raphaelim and
Rephaim. No
Rephaim,
L. Rephaim,
Rephaim, and
which
Og.
is a Rephaim is an offspring of a Nephilim and a human, and
And then
that's where the giants
Nephilim,
come from.
which is what Og is a an angel and a human, right?
Yeah, or angel or watcher or Nephilim, whatever
Right.
whatever you want
Watchers.
to call them.
Okay, so okay, so there's a lot of like this is going to be kind of interesting to go into. So let's just we're going to paraphrase what happens, and then we'll go
Yeah.
into like the oddities. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There. So basically, Og, at some point they've gotten down to this unspeakable mistake that they talk a lot about, and
Unspoken mistake.
the
Yeah.
unspoken mistake is something that has made it to where, well, there's no more females. Like, so Og has his wife, who
She's the last female giant left alive. For some reason. We don't know
for some
what
reason
caused it.
we never get
Mm.
told why she's the only fertile female alive, and they
Mm.
have a son together. But then later, like in her later age, she gets pregnant with the moon child, which is a female giant. So they have another female giant, and Nimrod, who has done the
By the
unspoken.
way, by the way, she gets pregnant without having sex with King Og. She's off
In the
recovering
forest. Yeah.
recovering from giving birth to Augeas or Augeas, the son, which is no good for you need a female to keep having giant children. Or as we'll get into it, maybe giants couldn't breed. Maybe they
Well,
had to be produced from a Nephilim and a
well,
human each
because like
time.
let's go into how Og, like you were pointing that out the other day. How was Og conceived again? I can't remember where that was at, but it was something
Oh,
like
yes.
her
It was
and
a
Og were conceived in the temple of.
Yeah, it was it was called a harvest. Hang on, here we go. It's a procreation harvest. So Leicester, queen of the Rephaim, and I, Og, were bred from the spoils of a Rephaim procreation harvest, born of worship to Baal of the moon, born in the temple and reared in the high places. I, Og, trained in both the priesthood of Baal and with the chaser and driver war arts. Leicester became a sorceress before Baal of the moon and transcriber of words. And it goes on. I mean, there's heaps of stuff in there, but the way he describes it, it makes you think, well, that
Yeah,
sounds like someone planned it. They were the result of a procreation harvest.
yeah, so they don't exactly have male females like we have kind of procreation. That's not exactly how giants come across. And there's also a really big variety of size variation of the giants from how it reads. Like there,
Yeah,
which we can get into that later. But okay, so oh, let's talk real quick about like the gods are weird. There's a ball, like Baal of earth, of moon, of sun, of celestial bodies, and then there's Mot. So Nimrod worships Mot. And then Og worships Baal of the whatever the I don't know, like a lot of different balls.
well, the four Baals.
The four
Like in the
balls.
Bible, what's interesting is, and we'll get into it, is the things that tie in with the Old Testament. Um,
Yeah.
in the Old Testament, a lot of times it talks about the Baals, plural, not Baal. So, and this is the thing. This is why this obviously never was going to make it into the Old Testament. There's nothing Christian, or it's completely opposite to the Christian message. I mean,
Oh,
as we're going to find out, these guys were horrible
it is
people.
a hateful book, y'all. Like, you want to talk about, like, you want to read a book that's like, good God, this person.
It's
I've never,
probably a good thing. It's a good thing they got killed off.
yeah.
If they
If
were real,
there's any
it's a good
truth in
thing.
this, you're kind of going like, oh, giants are like very
Yeah,
bad, very
I
bad.
kind of I have a lot more respect for Moses and Joshua now. When people are reading the Old Testament, they're going, how could this God have been so cruel as to say they had to kill all, not just the men, but the women and the children? But then you realize what you're talking about, the people of Canaan and other places, they were at least partly giants, and they were not even supposed to be in existence. It wasn't part of the plan.
Well, they eat humans. They
They,
eat babies. Like they eat all they call us the smaller selves, and they
yeah,
very yeah.
let's
Okay,
quickly
but
describe.
okay, let's
Yeah,
go back to the storyline first. Okay,
okay.
so anyway, so like Og and like his wife gives birth to the last female,
The
um,
Moon Child.
the Moon Child. That's what she's called, Moon Child. And anyway, when everybody knows, like when she's a child, her mother dies because of after giving birth from her. She was too old when she had her, and
Yeah,
she
killed her.
yeah, killed her basically. So then, like Og's raising the girl, and Nimrod wants to have the girl as his wife. So he breaks in to steal the Moon Child, like him and his army
Yeah.
of giants or
Well,
whatever.
he wasn't there. He wasn't there, but yeah, a group of
he,
his guys had been sent
he
in to.
ordered his
Yeah,
guards to go steal the Moonchild. He didn't personally with his own hands do
yeah,
it. But anyway, in the process of trying to kidnap her, um, they wound the child and kill her. It
yeah.
takes a while for her to
Well,
die,
yeah,
but like it takes her like a week to die. But anyway, so Og is like vengeance is mine. So it's a
yeah,
total like vengeance story. And so then it starts the 100,000 giant war.
yeah.
And this like this reads like, and it correlates as to, and me and Andrew have kind of discussed whether we think this is what either it brought on the great flood, like the Noah great flood, or
Mm.
it happened to coincide with the Noah great flood. Which for me, I'm always kind of like, yeah, everybody likes their younger Dryas in this field. And that's great.
Mm.
And I like the younger Dryas a little bit. I used to really like it, but now I'm like, meh, whatever. Because I'm really more into, I think there was a big nuke war or something. So for me, that's like one of the elements of this that I kind of like was like, okay, I can get behind this. Cause like I mean, there's literally one of these giants that throws a mountain.
Yeah, that's when you start. That's it's hard to believe. stuff like that. But then I asked myself, well, what's going on in this translation, even in Aramaic? What?
Okay, on page 59, so then Myrle or Myre, Merle, Merle,
Merle.
Merle, but there's no L. I don't
Oh,
know.
Mir. Yeah, Mir, one of the giants.
One, okay, then when lifted a mountainside and threw it upon the circumcised Nephilim, killing 300 of them. Merle then connected with his floating beast and became a rhinoceros with many horns. Merle, who, while connected, screamed, "A whip for the beast, a bridle for the Nephilim, and a rod for Nimrod's back." I mean, there's things like that a lot where so we went through and we counted. It goes through and it talks about all the different tribes of giants that joined. So like supposedly there was 100,000 giants that joined this war, and
Yeah.
it was a giant war against each other.
It was Nimrod. Yeah, it was King Og declared war on Nimrod's kingdom because they killed the moon child.
Right. And also because of the unspoken mistake, which was sometime before the Moonchild,
Yeah.
and it had to do something with circumcision. So
Oh
Nimrod's
yeah.
group, yeah, so that was a big thing. So Nimrod got injured in another war previous, like, and his loins got injured, so he had the first like accidental circumcision. And
Right.
so in order
And
to
then he decreed that all of his men had to be circumcised as well. Because
disguise his own
otherwise,
self identity
yeah,
amongst
because
them.
obviously in battle he didn't stand out. He didn't have mark anything on him that says I'm the leader, because otherwise the enemy would focus on him. So,
Mm-hmm.
and these guys fought back in the old days. These guys fought basically naked, and so he had all his men circumcised so that they couldn't identify him in the field of battle. Supposedly.
Supposedly,
That's
yes. And
it's
Og hates circumcised people, and they also make
yeah.
the smaller selves get so Nimrod
Yes,
made his
yes.
smaller selves get circumcised too. So it seems like they ruled over human-sized people too. It's like so the female they didn't eat girl
The
humans.
females.
The
Right. Just the
yeah.
boys.
They were their concubines and they were also their priestesses and they prophesied stuff for them.
Yeah, well, they were Mot's concubines, so they were never. No one ever had. They didn't. They were the giants weren't allowed to have sex with them or anything like that. They worked in the temples, and they were Mot's. Sorry, Baal's concubines. So that
Right.
means they given over their life to a priestly existence.
Now, the difference was that Nimrod allowed the smaller selves to marry each other. So,
Yes.
like in Nimrod's kingdom, humans could procreate and have families and stuff, even though they ate the men in secret and their baby boys. But
Mm-hmm.
in Og's kingdom, they were
They
just food,
openly.
just open. Like, yeah, if it was a baby boy that was born, it was like yum. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
God.
that's what it read like, dude. I
I
don't
know.
know. Um,
It's a bit. It's almost. It's quite Lord of the Rings in parts. But then when you read Lord of the Rings, you realize this guy was basing all of his stuff on actual mythology and history and stuff.
Yeah, and so the smaller self women prophesized the great waters that were to come. And this is
Yes.
like the great flood. So we don't really know. Okay, so then we kind of get into gods, okay? Cuz then they even mention in here like on page 40 like they mention like gods we do not know. That's mentioned a bunch. There's certain all these different giant tribes. Some of them had a things called the dark ones that
Yes.
their dark ones would talk to them, and some of them had bright ones and they would convene with their dark and bright ones and
Mm.
sounded kind of like
And it doesn't really explain what they're talking about, but you have to assume that that's some kind of spiritual dimension to the whole thing.
so the people all the giants they knew that they were going to be the last of their kind, so they decided so it sounds like they basically are like, all right, just bring it on, let's go down in glory. It was a very very divided like half on those who were for Nimrod and those who were for Og. Well, I'm gonna spoil it for you right here. But anyway, Og kills Nimrod. Like Og is the victor in it. But it basically it's kind of like just like a giant genocide. Um,
Well, part of the thing was they didn't have any females to procreate, and then they got into a huge war, which basically the way it describes it in the Old Testament is God made them go to war with each other, which to help wipe them all out. Making them go to war with each other is a perfect way of helping to get rid of them. And I think the women, because they're all people, mankind is referred to as the smaller selves by Og. I don't know why they use that term, but anyway, it's the smaller selves. The women, I think, they said they had a prophecy, and it led to the unspoken mistake. But I think they came up with a plan, and this is between the two kingdoms of Og and Nimrod. It was the smaller self priestesses of Nimrod's kingdom as well that had the same prophecy, which led to the same unspoken mistake. And then after that had been discovered, remember, Og just killed all of his priestesses or everyone involved with that prophecy, which led to the unspoken mistake. But I think that their job had already been done. And I think these women could possibly, it doesn't say it, but if you read between the lines, they might have cooked up a plan to get rid of the giants.
yeah, which I mean, when you read it, you're kind of like, well, why wouldn't they? I mean, it's like for example, Baal is like when Baal speaks through Og, so like Og is kind of a channel for Baal on multiple occasions.
At times. Yeah.
Like after the moon child dies, he fasts for like 7 days or 5 days.
Yeah, and he chains himself to the temple in the high places. I thought that was really interesting with the just in general the megalithic stuff that we know about. He goes there and does what is kind of like the Native American Sundance thing, where you tie yourself to a tree and you're starving, and eventually you go into trance, and he basically chains himself to the temple with metal chains. He won't accept food from anyone, and then eventually goes into a trance, and then proceeds to make this statement. And by the way, all of this is written down by Onzel, the slayer of small selves. So he was the scribe that's writing down all of these things that Og said. Og doesn't write anything
until he dies. He dies.
Until he dies, and then another guy takes over.
Yeah. So Baal likes, when Baal speaks through Og, he's I wrote, like, my notes are, he's very much a jealous god, and he's concerned about Baal hates the circumcision thing, right? And then really? Baal likes life sacrifices, particularly small self male infants, and Baal likes debauchery. This is claimed in there. Like, Baal likes debauchery, drunkenness, and idolatry. And then it's and Baal likes to kill for him and kill again when necessary. So he likes for people to covet, steal, and embrace the fear of Baal. And then, so my note is, I'm failing to see how you become a popular deity that flourishes with this kind of. I don't get what's in it for anybody who follows them. You just end up dead. It's
yeah, and it's the same with the Aztecs. They all. They were all the reasons. It's kind of partly human nature, like, back in the day when people would be burnt at the stake or killed in public, you'd think no one would want to turn up and watch that, but it turns out that huge crowds will turn out to watch someone being tortured to death, and it's just a horrible part of human nature. But we're talking about humans, but then we're also talking about giants. What was their nature? It seems like in a lot of cases it was just like that, but worse.
Well, I mean, it seems like these things are basically possessed.
That's another. Well, exactly. They allow themselves to be possessed, and they possess other. It seems like they talked about being possessed by animals and possessing animals.
Okay, so that's a big thing in here. So you have a lot of time, like, their beasts take over, and they become their old beasts that once were like floating beasts. Like, they become all these different. Like, I read the one where they become the rhinoceros, or one becomes a snake, or one becomes
a wolf. Like King Og became a wolf on the field of battle. I don't even know what that means, and I don't know why. Being a giant, possibly he's described as the biggest giant. If you were Why would you? What
Well,
would be the point of turning into a wolf? But I don't get it. But I suppose it might. They might be
there
mean
is
it's
some other
character.
giant that they say is the biggest giant. Atlan is a giant. That's interesting. But
Mm,
like I said, Mur was the one that threw. Mur lifted the mountain. But there's some interesting giant clans. Like there's
yeah.
uh
Dragon
it's
siblings.
Ipos, Apos,
Ipos.
yeah,
Epos. Yeah.
who's effeminate and fornicated with males, and
Yeah.
Ipos, who's
Sounds very Greek.
reminded the Raphaelium of the unspoken mistake, so that he was disliked for it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that makes
So was the unspoken mistake that they all went gay and they weren't having, and so they just. But what happened to all the women? Was it like a Sodom and Gomorrah type
I'm not
situation?
sure that there ever were women. It doesn't even feel like they didn't procreate in the same way that we procreate.
Maybe, yeah, maybe that's it. There were no women in the army in the 100,000 giants.
Yeah, but of course they're all there. I mean, we already know the Moonchild was the last female giant,
Yeah,
so that's interesting. Anyway, there's about I counted around 70. What did I count? 72, 75,
yeah,
something.
68, 70, 72, something around there. Clans.
Clans of
Yeah,
giants that
yeah.
each clan would bring 100, 1,000, like whatever, with them. When they were they always connected into their animals, so I thought that was interesting. And
Mm,
then they had their dark angels and their dark ones that they talked to. I thought that was really weird. Now the dragon siblings lived in a city in the sky that was protected by their bright ones, and they were hired by Og with gold stipend from Baal's Earth Temple.
yeah,
So then you're kind of going like, so there were some mercenaries in there.
yeah.
Um,
They were from the east. It was described as coming from the east, and they had blonde hair and blue eyes, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The dragon
Anyway,
siblings. They sounded quite different from all the rest, and there was quite a lot of them. I think they made up like a good, like not a quarter, but maybe a fifth of the 100,000. I think they were 20,000 in number or something like that.
yeah, so the book kind of goes a lot, like in all 60 or 70 of these clans, it gives
Clans.
you like a paragraph or two about each clan. So
Mm.
at first, like I was like, oh my God, I don't care, because like some of it will be like, oh, and then they carried what was the club and the like tells you like the weapons
Oh,
they would
yeah,
use.
they had a weapon called the chaser and driver, and you just don't know what that is. A club and a sword and an axe all sounds pretty straightforward, but a chaser and driver and learning the arts of the chaser and driver, I just wonder what that is. It's
Yeah.
not described at all, but they were using it a lot. Everyone in the giant army, they were using the chaser and driver. Could it be a chariot? No, the horses would have been
I
too
mean,
small.
I don't know why I thought a chaser and driver would be like a club and a like a I don't know.
Mm.
Well, like what about
Mm.
that? What's that club and then that ball with the spikes on it? What is that called?
Oh, a mate. It's called I think I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a mace, but it's on an end of a chain.
Yeah, like
Could be something like that.
I don't know. That's kind of like
Chaser.
what I visualized when I was hearing about it. Anyway, so Og is eventually Og himself is killed by Moses, and that's
Eventually,
is that even in the Old Testament?
yeah, it is. Moses kills Og,
Yeah.
and the very end of the book of Og is his last few statements that were written down by the second transcriber, and it was all just insults to Moses and what he was going to do to him.
Yeah.
Because at this point, this is when, and there's another interesting time with the Old Testament, is you think of King Og of Bashan, but in this book, it doesn't start out in Bashan. He actually goes and takes Bashan, and it's there where Moses, no, where is it? I think it's the area of Bashan when Moses finally, when they take over that area. And I'd love to know how. But they did supposedly have the Ark of the Covenant at that point, which is perhaps how they could possibly have won in battles against all these different Canaanites and Amorites, these different groups that were, it sounds like they were partly giant and partly human, because they had, but the giants were probably in charge, but they were largely groups of humans as well, which would have
Well,
partly
I
been
mean,
for food and partly for work, slaves, all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because like in the battle it talks a lot about like the it rained down stones and stuff like that. So that do you remember that part? Like there was at least one or two giants that could make boulders fall or
They
something.
could do crazy things. Yeah, someone could make the sun flash and burn all the
Depending
Nimrod's
on what
troops.
connection they had to their
Yeah,
dark ones or light ones and their
yeah.
so I
It's,
mean like we were dealing with some really crazy entities here because
mm,
they I mean even when Og is about to get killed by Moses, he insults him by like being like, "Oh, you and your insect-sized gods," you know.
yeah. Which that's exactly. It's very much like in the Odyssey when they come across this what they call the Cyclops, which is a giant, and in one part of the conversation, the protagonist is sort of appealing to Zeus, and the giant says, "What use have I for your stupid little god? My god Poseidon is much bigger and much more powerful than your stupid little god." Very very similar kind of. I mean, what does it mean? An insect-sized god? What are giants just? Do they just
Well, the
criticize
scale of
things
all
that?
this stuff is
Well,
really bizarre to me. I don't know.
hmm,
Oh, and it does actually. I forgot to mention that the false prophecy does lead to the unspoken mistake, which that's why
yeah,
I think that theory you said that the unspoken lines of maybe the ladies were like, yeah, you know, you guys need,
these guys up.
yeah, you guys need to go ahead and kill all your females. That's gonna be good for you. Um, yeah. So, what was I? They had six. There was a lot. There's a lot of mention of six fingered, bright ones, dark ones, angels, demons. We have watchers. We have gods. We have mott balls, all the balls, um,
So
and
if
then
we were,
gods that are unknown. And like some of the giants talk to like they specifically say like they have their own gods. They have different gods than us.
yeah, yeah, that no one knows about.
Yeah. Uh, so what kind of a spiritual warfare thing are we dealing with? This is
Well,
really bizarre.
uh, it's tempting to tie in and say that in the Old Testament terms, like we know Baal is what all the Canaanites were worshipping. If Nimrod was an early Israelite, let's say, um, not that they were in that land at the time. I guess it was probably Turkey or something. But Nimrod, if Nimrod's god Mot, um, if that is Jehovah, then it all kind of ties in. But we don't know. Mot, the description of Mot is the god of the dead. So there is a Nimrod's fortress. Yeah, it's called Nimrod's fortress. That doesn't necessarily mean it was built by Nimrod. And if you look at its dimensions, it's not big. It's but definitely built for smaller people. If you were a giant, you'd have trouble getting into Nimrod's fortress. But so Nimrod, the period between Nimrod and Moses is quite a few generations. And but so that raises the question: well, how long did King Og live? How long did these giants live?
I mean, they don't really say, but you get the impression that they're I mean, I don't know why, but I got the impression that they were very old.
Yeah. By the way, in the Old Testament, it doesn't say that Nimrod fought with King Og. So it's only in this book, the Book of Og,
Well, in the
that,
Old Testament, you don't really get the impression that Nimrod is actually a giant. In this book, you get the
no,
he's a total giant. He's like goes
yeah,
1 to 1 with Og, but
yeah, he must have been big. Or had some people say Nimrod was involved, uh, quite apart from building the Tower of Babel, involved in all sorts of different technologies in the time of Enoch.
okay, so that's
So
what
did
makes me
he have
go like,
genetic? Did he have genetic technology at his fingertips where he could actually turn himself into a giant?
okay, so like
I
I
don't
think
know.
you're onto something with that, and that's what makes me kind of feel like the Tower of Babel described in the Old Testament to
Mm-hmm.
me, even I mean, I put this together like when I was like in college. I remember I read that and I was going like, oh, it sounds like the internet to me. It's like a tower that could let allowed everybody to speak the same language, and it like
Well,
remove.
apparently they all did speak the same language, and it was after the Tower of Babel that all these other supposedly gods spread everyone
Scatter.
all over the
Well,
place.
the fall of the Tower of Babel is when the languages were scattered so that they wouldn't know
Yeah.
what was going on. Like that was what was the but so that always makes me think like, oh crap, we have the Tower of Babel again that's being built. Like that's what the internet is. And I
Mm,
just don't think that the controllers would are gonna like to like allow us to have the Tower of Babel for long. That's just another
I
side note.
wonder.
But I just think that it does sound very, it doesn't sound like just like a big giant tower. It sounds like a tower that could allow your communication to be the same. Like, would that sounds like Google Translate to me or something? I don't know. That
Yeah.
sounds like
I've always thought it was the pyramids
what like Tower of Babel in general.
in
Or
Egypt. Yeah, even though that's not Babylon. Um,
well, maybe all the pyramids all over the world were giant internet towers, or like some kind
yeah,
of
exactly.
big
That's what I'm.
communication thing.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, the Tower of Babel, which is a
Um,
technology and which did allow possibly for some kind of energy and maybe transmission of signal. I don't know. But
hmm.
what else is there that even remotely uh, ties in the ancient world to an idea of the Tower of Babel? I think it's got to be the pyramids.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different thing. But they would then be in the wrong place. What are they doing in Egypt? Well, I thought Egypt, Egypt isn't Babylon. It's not. The different places. I mean, I had a real hard time even getting a good solid idea of where Bashan was because
Yeah.
it,
Well, it doesn't.
depending on what you read, you get different ideas of where Bashan was. But we know that they had big oak trees growing there, so you have to start thinking about, well, where do big oak trees grow? It could be. They talk about the people from the northern lands. There were definitely giants in the army that sound like they came from probably the British Isles. You know, um, they came from all over the known world. When he put out the call for the 100,000 giants, that
Yeah.
call went out to what they describe as the known world,
I
which
mean, and it sounds like there's different races that come, different
yeah,
every
there's black giants, white giants, um,
is
giants from the
one from
east.
the east. Yeah.
So
And then there's
it's
okay, like this other one that was of interest is Nabas, and his dark ones stood beside him as trees, and he shaped the shores of the great land with stones and sand. So that's another example of one of the ones that did crazy stuff. And then this other one is like stone walls built by giants, even carrying the largest they could find. So
yeah.
that's kind of very megalithic sounding to me.
Oh yeah, and do you remember the part about when the temples in the high parts of the land became charged? Like it became charged, and if any unsuspecting person, small self or giant, was to go up there, they would be killed
Yeah.
because it was like the stone work was charged to the point where you'd get electrocuted. Here we go. Oh, it's right towards the end, chapter 6, prophecy of Bashan's rule. Um, so this is interesting. We haven't even read anything really from the book, but have a listen to this. Chapter 6 is told by Onzal, the slayer of small selves, before Baal of the moon. It came to pass that the kingdom and army of Og fasted before their march to Bashan. On the 5th day of fasting, the whole of Og's encampment was covered in smoke, and fire came down. The fire struck the sacrifices in the high places because Baal of the sun and Baal of the earth were there. The ground of the temple and the paths leading to it became charged on the 5th day with the presence of Baal of the earth and Baal of the sun. Many Rephaim attempted to climb the hill at the time of Og's prophecy and were struck dead with fire when they touched the charged ground.
Huh.
Crazy.
That's really
Um, so what the hell was going on? What does that mean? Smoke came down and fire came down.
That's
From
why
where?
I'm like nukes. This is like
Right.
this is just all I mean,
Uh, I
It's
was
kind of
thinking
like one of
solar
those things
outburst.
where, like, if you had somebody who had no contextual idea of our technology and they were from tribe that's never been outside of their tribe their whole life or whatever, and they came in, they're like, yeah, they have these little black boxes that they look at all the time, and they have
Mm,
the ability to create fire from their fingers. And they inhale smoke and breathe it out, and I mean, like, there would be all these, like, if you had no contextual, like, sometimes when you read stuff, or I
mm,
think about it like that, instead of what it is, even though it is what it is, that could just be somebody with no context trying to describe their technology. But I'd
mm.
still think that that sounds like a little bit like some advanced weaponry to me.
Yeah, fair enough. We still don't know what the chaser and driver is. Um, and we don't really hear about a lot of technology, but it's just everything that's being described in the field of battle. Maybe the translators are thinking that these are all spiritual terms, the light ones and the dark ones that hovered near them in battle,
Uh huh.
and in some cases even appeared as a group. Oh, there's some stuff in there that ties in with the Old Testament. Do you remember the story of Zaphan, who was captured by Nimrod and thrown into a furnace that had been heated up 7 times the normal heat, and some of his men got killed pushing him in there. And then
Oh yeah.
while he was in there, Nimrod looks in and goes, "There's 4 guys walking around in there, and how many how many people did we chuck in there?" And then they open up the entrance, and Zaphan comes out, and he is untouched by the fire. And he says that those other figures you saw with me in the furnace were Baal of the sun, Baal of the earth, Baal of the moon. And then Nimrod just chops his head off. But it's a very similar story to the guy in the Bible, in the Old Testament, that gets thrown in the furnace and doesn't burn up. In fact, there's 3 of them. I just can't think of his name off the top of my head now.
Yeah, I can't help
It's
you.
not Joseph.
It's been a minute
Um,
since I've read the Old Testament.
yeah, well, it's good to go over it because I just noticed some of these things tying in. Another one is that Og has to keep his arms held up during the battle, and if they started lowering down, the battle started going against them,
Right,
and
so
then
you
his
hoist them
friends
on
helped up.
pillars.
Yeah, his
But
friends helped him.
the rain was
But
correlated
that
with that
that
too. So then that made
but
me think,
that
like, did they cause the 40 year, or the four, like, was he causing the rain?
right. Well, it certainly came at that point. But the thing I was going to say was that's exactly you notice in the Old Testament that's exactly what happened in battle with Moses. He had to hold his arms up, and while he had his arms up, the battle went their way. And if
Right.
his arms started dropping, the battle would go against them. And I think his friends help him hold his arms up. So what does that mean? Why would holding your arms up
Well,
make
I
the
mean, like,
go up?
Og was a channel for Baal, so I mean,
Right.
I mean, it seems like that, like, it is some sort of, there definitely is some kind of, they have telepathic and or connectivity with, they connect with their
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
So there is, yeah, I basically think it's like a spiritual warfare on a physical plane acted through them in like some weird ritualistic BS kind of
Yeah.
ways. I don't know. So like, let me give you an idea. There's just like a couple of stances of just how violent this book is. This is like, kids cannot read this book. It's like, only a half-loin Nephilim uh coward murders a child. For this offense and more, I regularly urinate upon his dead fecal bones corpse until the meat and awful pill away. Till the end of my days I will take the daily fecal journey to choke his Nephilim corpse. Of all the warlike hatred of which volcanoes are formed, I hold the most for the disrespected skeletal remains of the Nephilim hunter Nimrod, who led his kingdom in the loin weakening, member craving practice of circumcision. That's Og describing reasons why he hates, how much and why he hates Nimrod. But I mean, like, sometimes it goes on and on, and you're going like, dang, dude, like, take a chill pill. Like, he's just like,
Yeah,
I
the circumcision thing was it's hard to understand. They were they were on the one hand mystified by it. In battle, they would see the people that were in Nimrod's army. They would be in the middle of battle, and they would be stopped, kind of stunned, looking at all these circumcised guys, going, "What on earth have you done to yourself? Why would you do that?" And
Which I mean, fair enough, right? Like it's weird enough now that you do it to little baby boys, but like, can you imagine like being full grown like 100-year-old men or however old
yeah,
these dudes are, being like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
must be the money. Let's get some foreskin removed for
But
someone
they
else.
Yeah, but then they carried on fighting. It didn't. They were momentarily kind of stunned by it, but then incredibly offended. Like they were so. It's very hard to believe that you'd go to war over circumcision, but it almost
Yeah, but it
comes
wasn't really
across.
circumcision. The circumcision was just the marker that you were, you know, the analogy. Like, I'm not saying that I believe this, okay? I'm
Hmm.
just saying that this is the analogy I'm about to make is going to be a current controversial one. But like, there are people in the world who are saying that like the vaccination or something is a
The mark of the
genocide
beast.
shot, okay, right? And then like, let's say it is. Like, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying like, let's say this scenario is that like a bunch of idiots just decided to take this experimental thing without really questioning it much, and they took it, and then, oh, turns out like all of your offspring is going to be infertile and you're not going to be able to reproduce anymore, and it's going to, you create your own genocide, and 90% of you did it. It, whatever the unspoken mistake is, it kind of seems like that. I'm
Yeah,
not I'm not saying that that is what the vaccine is, but like there are conspiracy theories that say that that is like what's like will happen and is going to happen and some stuff that's happening. So I'm
the
saying like
population.
that analogy of would kind of work for something of what, like, it's almost like people opted into something that made them not be able to reproduce.
Mm.
That's how I kind of read the unspoken mistake, because
Yeah, but whatever it was, if there were giants, it certainly did work because
there's no more.
that's right.
Yeah.
Which is I would say a very good thing. Like whatever, I mean, it involved extermination of the entire race of giants, but
But then it talks like a lot about how a certain percentage of them are still they're still on the plane of the planet. Um
yeah. And if you, depending on your outlook, if you're Christians would say that the spirits of the Nephilim and Rephaim are still imprisoned here on this planet until some time in the future. So we're living in a world, in theory, which is just swarming with all sorts of weird
Dark ones.
dark ones that shouldn't really be here, but it just happens that they are in this particular instance. Which would explain a lot about the weird stuff that goes on in the world. Um, while everyone sleeps, everyone's sleepwalking through everything, but someone's in charge. Someone's in charge of big plans.
So what is your overall take on giants and I've been looking into giants a lot lately. Like, that's been the last 3 or 4 months. Like, that's been my a little side obsession. I go
Yeah,
through these
me too.
things. Yeah.
Well,
I
especially since that book came out.
Well, I just read it like with you, like, what, a month ago or something, right? I've been listening to Jim Valente and like Hugh Newman and
Mm,
who've done some really good research on giant stuff. And
really good stuff. Yeah. But, who else is really good? Timothy Alberino is really good. Judd Burton is really good. They're both regular podcast guests on podcasts that talk about that kind of thing. There's a
people
huge
will be like,
movement.
"Show me the bones. Where are the bones? Like, if they're
Um,
there, why aren't there bones?" And like, there's like the two. I mean, two reasons. One is that they seem to destroy them if they find them, whoever they are, being whoever owns this facility. There's some sort of narrative.
Smithsonian.
Smithsonian. There's some sort of narrative that doesn't like giants being in the narrative, which is bizarre
Mm.
considering that like a lot of different literature references in the past talk about them. Um, like, so who cares if they were real or not? Like, they're not real now, so what does it matter if they were? So I don't understand like the motivations for covering it up completely. But
Well,
then,
I think, sorry.
oh, and then the second thing is that like I think I heard this from Jim and Hugh talk about how even a lot of the accounts that they found, like after they found the bones, they disintegrate really quickly. Like after they're
Oh,
it's not like they were mummified in a way that's like
mm,
preserving them for thousands of years. Like they were buried in such a way that once you do find them, they're exposed to the elements, they turn to dust pretty quickly.
yeah, yeah. That's it. They're not actually fossilized. They're still, um, possibly relatively intact after thousands of years, but it's going to be in a horrible state of decomposition at that point.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't be hoping to find any bones.
Well, I mean, we have like like Dragon Man skull and like
Yes,
we have stuff that's kind of something something, but um
we
not
haven't seen that yet. I'm surprised that it would be
yeah.
nice to see a photo of that.
Have we not seen it yet? I thought when they had the article that they showed it. Let me look it up. Okay, see, you got
Oh
like
yeah, is that it? Is that the dragon skull? It looks to be. Is that a photo or is that a recreation?
I don't know because it says a photo of Harbin
Wang,
Crano. Is it? But
Wang Ji.
this is supposedly the
Oh
one
yeah, yeah.
found in China. Might be a new human branch.
Okay. Well,
That
that's
was the last
interesting.
document.
It's a shame there's nothing to compare it size-wise to.
Right. I mean, and it
A
almost looks
normal.
just like a digital.
Oh, It's got some measurements there. 50 millimeters.
I
Okay,
hate
so
when
that.
I hate when they do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the Geico dude. Like I don't know, the Geico
Ugh.
commercial thing.
Anyway,
Um,
um, that could be a giant skull. Could be.
I mean, yeah, but I don't think giants are completely gone.
You don't reckon?
Like like there's still people talking about like like the Afghanistan giant that they found
Yeah, yeah.
stuff in the 2000 teens or something.
Well, how I don't know how long these guys lived for. Um, but if there was one alive in Afghanistan, where did he come from? How long had he been there? And did he have the floating ones with
Well,
him at
and
the
then you
time?
have I mean you have there's you have the Lovelock Cave uh, giants
Yeah,
that were supposedly killed like in
yeah.
the late 1800s. So I mean that's
That's
not
true.
less than
That's not
150 years ago. I mean like that's not that long ago. The Patagonia giants and stuff that they apparently when the settlers came like they were walking talking like 9 or 8 9 foot giants.
well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've everyone's read the Old Testament. It's very briefly mentioned there. Um, it's in the Odyssey. Um, all the everyone has giants in their ancient mythology. All
And
cultures do. So
if they were just like big people with big, pituitary gland overgrowth where
mm,
they just are like, whatever NBA players or something, like that's like okay, good on them. Like that's fine. But, we do have really crazy megalithic stones all over the place and we don't really know how they were
mm,
built and I still think that even if you were a giant, unless you were the size of a giant that could move a mountain, I don't really think some of these things you could have built that easy, even if you were twice as big as we are. Um,
sure, you definitely need technology,
yeah, you
and
still are going
the
to have
elongated
technology.
the
Yeah.
elongated skulls are still very interesting as well. You have to wonder, what did these giants actually look like? Some of their descriptions, there was one of them was described as so ugly that it could stun a bull elephant. Uh,
Yeah.
that's pretty
And
humorous.
then one was really good looking.
Yeah, he was very good looking. Yeah, so they had quite a range.
Yeah.
But I would say it's worth the read just for interest's sake, and there's certainly no boring bits, and there's a lot to puzzle over. But I'm just surprised no one else has really tackled it. Even when I was just doing a little bit of research. Early on, there was a review of the book online, and then I don't know, one minute it was there and then it wasn't. He took it down, and it was like, I think there'll be a general feeling amongst Christian readers that it's because it's the opposite of reading something Christian. They will probably prefer to think of it as not legit.
Well, I mean, like that. I sent you that thing last night of the like the Google or the a YouTube review of some scholar guy basically explaining why this can't be true. And I don't know, it was a 10-minute rant that was so boring. I listened to and couldn't even comprehend what he said because I was just like, I don't know.
He who knows? He could be right, but
Could be.
I think it's still worth. I'm also interested in. Apparently, this was not the only thing that was released by the Vatican in 2015. There was thousands of
Yes.
documents.
That's the
So
thing is
I
like
want to. I want to know what else have you got?
you got legend of the Library of Alexandria never really completely got burned. It got like basically
Sure.
reload. I mean, like it is like there's 5 miles of literally 5 miles of documents in the Vatican that are like not for public display, and
Yeah.
so it's
Why?
weird when they like slowly leak stuff. I wonder why they do.
That's another question. If this is legit, why did they choose in 2015 to suddenly
Right?
go,
Why
yeah,
now? Why it'd be
let's
like
put it out?
okay,
I don't know, but I'm glad they did, if that is what happened.
yeah.
What else can you say about it? It also includes some parts of Enoch, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Giants, which is very brief, but it all sort of goes together quite well. There's nothing in this that really argues with the Old Testament. It's just that you're looking at in the Old Testament, you're looking at the battle from the
Except that
from the
perhaps
side.
it looks like perhaps the 100,000 giant war. My interpretation is that they basically brought on they brought on their own whatever, they brought on Noah's flood, they brought on the apocalypse of their own
Yeah,
species, they brought on the uh whatever last deluge.
yeah, because right in the middle of battle, all of a sudden the heavens opened and it started
And it
raining.
rained for 40 days.
Yeah, and it came up to first of all, it was coming up to their knees, and then it was coming up to their waists. And they're trying to fight in this rising waters, and eventually they have to stop fighting and they all head for the mountains. And then it mentions that there was a battle of the mountains, which was written about, which is not included in here. So I bet the Vatican's got some more, probably got some more
Yeah,
stuff in here.
it doesn't feel like completed. Like you don't have the entire text
No,
of
there's
the
bits missing. Yeah.
story. Yeah, there's definitely it doesn't give you the full um after you don't get a prologue of like what went
It
on.
doesn't even really describe how they caught Nimrod. Like,
Well, it does describe how his son August and him like tore him apart.
oh, how they killed him, yeah. But it just started 1 minute there's a battle, and the next minute they've
They're just
captured
pulling him apart,
Nimrod
right?
and they're killing him. So there's
Yeah,
bits
there's
missing, I
definitely
think.
some disjointed fragmentation of stuff. I mean, it doesn't flow like,
Mm.
which I don't know if that's just a clever way of somebody like trying to make something look authentic or not. Like, because I mean, that's how our records would be. They would be not that well preserved and fragmented, I would think. But
Mm.
cause I thought that was just that could just be like a literary technique. And it's interesting because like the Father Martin guy like says that this made him lose his faith by reading in that, and I don't understand
Mm.
why that would do that as well.
Yeah, I don't get that. I don't get it. I
Uh,
didn't put too much into what he was
yeah, I like his
getting all
little.
dramatic about. Oh, this is such a this has changed my life having to translate this book, and now I don't know what I believe in anymore. It's like, well, if that's all it took, man.
Yeah, exactly. um okay, so Nimrod, page 88, like Nimrod surrenders to Og and asks to be forgiven for the
Oh, he
murder.
surrendered.
Yeah, he
That's
asked
right.
to be forgiven at the Moonchild.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're like, nope. And then so Og and his son pull Nimrod apart. And I thought this was an interesting literary, what do you call that?
Illusion
Where the little
device.
device. Okay, a little interesting literary device where he goes, he gives up the ghost and dies. He gives up the
Yeah.
ghost and dies. I'm like, did they really write that like back then, or is that just like some
It, yeah, who knows? You'd be
poetic
surprised how many common day phrases actually come directly from the Old
license?
Testament.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very true.
It's unbelievable. That's one of the things you notice actually going back over the Old Testament is all the phrases that we still use today that are directly from the Old Testament. There's tons of them. It's part of our lexicon. We don't ever, we don't think, you don't realize, but it is. And there's devices, like you say, in there that
Yeah,
that
like it'll be as difficult as a needle through an eye, or like putting it. Yeah.
right. Needle through an eye, yeah. um, well, did we cover everything? We probably didn't. I don't know. It's so hard to. I mean,
I know.
you could just go over the story, but it basically is that there were giants, and then they got down to the last female because of a stuff up, and then they had a battle, and then by the end of it, Moses is turning up. Right at the end, you've got this character Moses turning up, and he kills Og. Oh, well, he doesn't kill him in this. That's what happens after. I mean, you get to read Og's final words, and then that's the end of that story, I guess. You still had in the future there were still more giants that they were killing, because after Moses came
Yeah.
Joshua, and he was going hard in the paint. And you've got King David with
Goliath.
Goliath. So this was an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
But it changed
Then that
from
makes me think that like it took however many hundreds of years to kill them all off. It's not like they
oh
just die
thousands
and they're not
thousands of
being reproduced. So I think they are the same group that had lived.
yeah. And remember when Og describes first discovering the smaller cells in an area of his
Like
kingdom?
they sprung up. Like there were more of them that came. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of makes you think, well, that's kind of like we think that there were humans and then Nephilim had sex with human women and the giants were the offspring, but he makes it sound like the giants were there before the humans.
Yeah. Well, and then that just makes me think like, man, we're seeded. We are a seeded race of weird.
Something like that, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, and like it's like when you there's some Native American, or not Native American, some like a Mesoamerican culture like references to how we're at the fifth sun or something, we're the fifth race of man, and that there's
Yeah,
going to be two more after us, and that like we're getting smaller as we go along.
that could be it. It could be it. If there's the expanding Earth theory, which would be that if you wind it backwards, and the Earth was smaller, then the gravity would have been less, so it would have allowed for larger creatures. And we know the atmosphere. Well, we don't know really, but scientists tell us that in the past there was a higher oxygen level and a higher carbon dioxide level. So there's all sorts of possibilities.
I mean, the fossil record would definitely support, like, even if you just look at the flora, that everything used to be bigger.
Absolutely. So you could be right. In the future, we might start getting smaller.
They're like little people, like ants or something.
I don't know.
We'd be less invasive, I suppose.
But it's an interesting subject, and you know, at least we've had a crack at it, because it's like no one else wants to do it. So we've had a go.
Yeah,
It's
I
tough
mean,
because
from my own point of view, I thought this was yeah, it was definitely an interesting read, and it was a it's definitely, if you're interested in like giant stuff, definitely worth looking into. Like, just to add more context into your database of like what might be going
absolutely.
on.
And it's kind of like the difference between only reading the Old Testament and reading the Old Testament plus the
Apocryphal
stuff the apocryphal stuff that didn't make it in the
Dead
third
Sea
century.
Scrolls and all that, yeah, or the
Mm.
Gnostic Gospels and all that.
I just want to read as widely as possible, and some of it might be bullshit, but I'll still read it anyway because it's all got to be considered, I think. And
It,
it's not a long read. It's not a big book. I mean,
no, it's probably like less than what was it,
it's
100 something pages.
yeah, and only half of that is the Book of Og. The other half is Enoch and the Giants.
Cool.
Well,
So that was the Book of Og.
that was the Book of Og. At least in...
So there you go. Read it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, Andrew. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yep.